name is Tierney Stewart.
Hi, I'm Lampley.
And today we're going to be presenting a short functional report about potential culture shock factors that expatriates from America could potentially experience when they move to Ukraine to start a new branch of the Smith Company. We are presenting this research to Miss Angela Smith, who is the Vice President of Acclimation at the Smith Company.
The objective for this research is to provide information to employees that are soon to go to live in Lviv, Ukraine, to help open the new branch, prepare them for the potential culture shocks that they might experience, and just prepare them for the culture and the differences that are in Ukraine different from America.
So the first culture shock that we're going to talk about is the general attitude and just kind of acceptance of food, and in particular the biggest difference is that Americans are much more acclimated to processed food. However, in Ukraine it's much more common to grow your own produce and eat that along with sharing that with the community. It's relatively uncommon to find mass amounts of processed food, and so that could be a really big difference for some American expatriates simply because we rely a lot on processed food, and it's relatively easy and relatively common to just like drive to the store and pick something up, but it's not as common and something that's not as expected in Ukraine. And so because of that, it could be a bit of an adjustment to not be able to purchase some of their like guilty pleasures or their regular go-tos and stuff like that.
Another difference between America and Ukraine is that their society is a collectivist society, which means they focus more on the community than the individual. There's a lot of smaller villages and towns, and it's a very close-knit community, and the whole country is more interconnected than America would be, and they just overall think about the whole group rather than the individual, and that's just sort of how their culture is.
One point about that is that that could be potentially beneficial for the company, that potentially the local people that could be working for the company may be working towards more of a group goal, which could really benefit the company in the long run. The last culture shock that we're going to talk about is how they approach interpersonal relationships. The biggest difference is just that they interact a lot more physically than we are used to. Americans are used to having their own little bubble and their own space and everything, and that's somewhat of a thing in Ukraine in some professional settings, but especially on a one-on-one, more friendly level, personal space is minimized. And so it's not uncommon to approach someone new with a warm hug or even a kiss on the cheek. That could be a really big culture shock for our expatriates simply because that's not something we do in America, and so it could be a little bit jarring or even offensive or just uncomfortable for them, and so that's something they need to be prepared for, especially when they're trying to make personal relationships with new people in the Ukrainian community.
These are our sources. Thank you. Are there any questions?
So the question is, what was the most rewarding part of your research? In my opinion, the most rewarding part, I think, was just speaking to someone who got to spend personal time in Ukraine and get to learn a little bit more about the country from their experiential perspective rather than just through research and stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting to be able to hear kind of his perspective of things. There were a bunch of kind of random little things that I thought were interesting, and so I think that was probably the most rewarding part, was just getting like a personal perspective.
For me, the most rewarding part of the research was just being able to learn about another culture and kind of being able to semi-experience the differences when I think about the employees, the expatriates going to that country and working there and how that would be.
Thank you for watching our presentation.